Good morning to everyone who is watching. I'm very excited today to have as my guest Linda Glaz. Linda, I met Linda. Meet isn't even the right word. I went to a writers' conference, a virtual writers' conference, where they offered the opportunity to pitch your book to literary agents. And I chose Linda. Now, I have to admit that part of the reason I chose Linda was her age. Because when I looked at the pictures of all the other agents who were attending, they all looked about 18 years old. I mean, I know they're not, but they were a very young crowd, it seemed like. And I wanted a seasoned woman to talk to, even though even though I sort of knew that we weren't a good fit in terms of pitching my book to Linda. I wanted to talk to her about it because I knew she'd have good advice. And indeed, she did have good advice. So, Linda, welcome.
Thank you so much. You mean you didn't mix me up with the 18-year-olds? I'm insulted.
I know. Don't get offended. Let me tell you a little bit about Linda. Linda is a literary agent with Heartline Literary Agency. It is not her only career. She is also a very established writer. She's written 8 or 9, I'm not sure which, novels and a couple of novellas. So we have her here as a double threat. Somebody who can give all of us who are watching and listening the benefit of her life, her experience. So I'm really pleased that you agreed to do this. I was scared to death to ask you.
Oh my goodness, no problem at all. I'm happy to do it.
Good. I want to start. I've divided this into 2 parts, this interview. One is your life as a literary agent, and the other is your life as a writer. So I want to start with the literary agency side of it. First of all, how did you become a literary agent? Did you wake up one morning?
Well, my agent, who is now retired from Heartline, Terry Burns, and I met, and we just really hit it off well. And when he would ask for some rewrites and such from me, and I would send them back to him, he said, I really like the way you view this from almost an editing point of view. He said, would you mind, or would you like to work with me as an assistant? He said, I'd be sending you some proposals to look at from time to time and want to know what your thoughts were on it and how much editing you thought it would need. And believe me, I'm not an editor, but I do pretty well with content editing, knowing what's working and what's not working. So I said, oh, that might be fun. I'd be happy to do it. If that'll help you, I'm happy to. And he went, yeah, that would help a lot. So he started to send me some proposals to look at, and I made some recommendations, a couple of which he took. Excuse me. We're having a cold bit here right now, and it's making us all cough. So I began to take a look at some of them, and he said, I really, really like the way you do this. I'd like you to come on board as an assistant to him, an assistant agent, or whatever it was called at that time. And I said, sure, I'd love that. And so I worked with him for about 2 years. And then when we had someone retire from Heartline, and he said, why don't you put in your resume? And I said, well, I don't have a resume as an agent. He said, well, you've been working with me for 2 years. So I put it in, and Joyce said she'd take a chance, and it really was a really good match made there. Yeah.
Right.
So that was it. I was a reviewer online for some romance sites, and I was a reader for a small publishing house. So, I did have some experience in that, but to me, that felt more hobby-like. And then when I had this opportunity, I just couldn't pass it up.
Right. How many years have you been doing this, being an agent?
11. Wow. And I plan to be doing it until the day I die. I love it.
I got it. Walk us through what an agent's day looks like. A typical agent's day.
Well, it's different for each person and how they do it. For me, I go to emails right away and see if there's anything that I have to address immediately. Anything to do with contracts, a book that's ready for release that we need information on or to get information out there on. Um, Proposals that I've been considering that are really something I think I'm really liking and that I want to look at more material from an author. And of course, if anything comes in from one of my clients that needs attention immediately, they get immediate attention over everything else, including proposals coming in. And then I, if there's nothing like that that has to be dealt with immediately, then I go ahead and look at the proposals that I've gotten in, the submissions from authors. And sometimes I'll have one that I just can't make up my mind about. I love the
Mhm.
idea so much, but they might have a platform that's not quite big enough, or they might just need a lot of editing. They're just really not quite ready yet. But sometimes I'll toss it back and forth and I try to let them know if that's what I'm doing for, a month or even more sometimes, because
Oh,
I'll pick it up and read some and I just think, oh, this is so good, but it loses my attention too easily. If that happens, I usually give it a couple chances. I'll put it
wow.
away for a couple of weeks and look at it again. But so then that's about it. And then the rest of the day, generally, I mean, I connect with my clients through a client connection on Facebook. That's open most of the day, so that I'm going back and forth. Whenever I take a break, I click in there and see if there's anything I need to address on that. And the rest of the day is usually spent doing reads and reading proposals, or my clients will send me a full that I haven't seen the full of yet. And so I'll be reading that during the day. So that's about it. My emails
Hmm.
and my Facebook are always open so that if something comes in, I can address it right away.
Okay, you said when I was reading some of your biographical materials, I saw that you talked about mentoring.
Uh-huh.
When you're saying I sometimes go back and forth if I'm not sure about, is that a form of mentoring that you're saying? I mean, do you actually go back and forth with the potential client?
No, I mean, if there's something that I really like and I want to see any corrections that they can possibly do to it before
Hmm.
I would sign them as a client, because I just love the idea of the book so much, then I will do that. Send it
Hmm.
back to them and say, let me see what you can do with this, or are you willing to do this?
Right.
Or yeah, I have done that with a few people and have ended up signing some as clients and others uh, a lot a lot of especially new authors, when they see their baby getting chopped up a little bit and you wanting them to make changes, they just can't do it. And I was
Yeah.
exactly the same way as an author. It was like, well, no, this is brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, if it's someone that there's a good chance of me signing them, they're teachable and they are really open to suggestions. And yes, I have signed a couple people that way where I've worked with them on and off for a couple months. One young girl I actually met at conferences over the course of 4 years.
Mm.
And unfortunately, her writing never got to that level where I could send her work out. And she was just really struggling with a lot of the basics. But her stories were so intriguing. And
Oh.
she was just a young gal. She was 15 years old when I first met her.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we worked together off and on for a few years, but then her life went in a different direction. So I just told her that one day, if she starts writing again, and I think her writing is up to that level, that I would re-sign her.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
you make a lot of
Interesting.
really awesome connections.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about technically you as an agent. What I would imagine that you get query letters day in, day out, day in, day out. Um, uh, what are they like? I mean, are the majority of them terrible or missing the point, or are they majority of them give us a sense of what you get.
Okay, the majority of query letters or proposals, that I say no to, and I'm talking in the 90 some percentile.
Wow.
And I would guess 75 to 85% of those are turned down because they're not even remotely ready, which means the grammar, punctuation, everything in
Oh,
them is just really not
yeah.
quite there yet, or that they're sending me queries and proposals in genres that I don't handle. That's
Hmm.
probably about 90% or so of what I turn down.
Wow.
Which means they haven't done the one thing that every author should do. And that means they haven't gone to our agency site and they haven't looked at what I handle.
Yeah.
I get, even though we're basically a Christian agency, most of us do handle general market work, but we're very explicit on there that we don't handle graphic sexuality or swearing at this time and at this moment. And I still get erotica sent to me. So
Oh.
I and I don't handle fantasy and I don't handle children's. And I
Yeah.
might get a fantasy erotica with pedophilia or something in it. And it's like, wow, really
Right.
missing the boat
Right.
here. So that's probably the number one mistake authors make, is that they don't go to the source of the rich information to find out exactly what we do
Right.
and don't handle.
Well, and I can see where even 15 years ago, it was much more sort of labor intensive to get the information than it is now.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, just 15 years ago, two friends and I wrote a book, and we were going to send it out, and we just, we had to go to the library. We had to
Yes.
get that giant guide.
Literary marketplace.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, and we didn't even know to really seek out what they were. So we set out just tons of just scattershot, tons of things, which was of course absurd, and it was very labor intensive.
Yes.
And now there's almost no excuse for sending a query letter or proposal to a wrong agent, or an agent that
Yeah.
is wrong for that,
Yeah.
because
It's funny
it's
you said that.
available.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because I remember that too when I started sending out. And do you remember how much that cost us?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yes, we were sending
literally
letters. Right.
maybe $2,000 or $3,000 a year to send out manuscripts and
Right. Right.
return envelopes and
Yes.
oh goodness. Yeah, now
Yes.
I mean it's so easy because almost every editor as well and agent is a completely electronic office, which means
Yeah.
that prospective authors can send out with literally no cost to them.
Right.
And yeah, it's a much kinder.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. It really is. It's kinder, and find that there are other ways than I didn't think were available, like looking at books similar to yours and looking at the
Sure.
acknowledgments at the end or something, where they
Sure.
thank their agent.
Yeah.
And you get an agent's name who handles that kind of book.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that's all of those things are available. Somebody said to me the other day, so because as you know, I'm writing. Somebody said, "Oh, are you going to like just send it to all like New York agents?" And I said, "No, no, of course not. What are you?" And I thought, "What are you, crazy, or you don't know?" Yeah.
Sure.
So it's tough.
It
So
is.
so list if you would for me. Well, no. First, tell me about how many queries you or your whole agency, however you want to answer it, queries and or proposals do you get a week, say, in your
Oh
agency?
gosh. Well, it's different for each one because it depends on how many different genres you handle.
Uh-huh.
That's part of the difference. If you have someone that handles mostly fiction today, the numbers are fairly high for fiction. Um, Nonfiction maybe a little bit lower, but more of that sells. So it's just different from person to
I see.
person. But probably, and it depends on the size of the agency as well. Gosh, I can't give you an exact number, but
Yes,
I know
got it.
Yeah, there are dozens to deal with at any given moment for sure.
Wow.
That was the reason why Terry used assistants. I have one young lady that I use, but she also cares for a brother with special needs, so she can't look at very much for me. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't have a exact number. I'm so
Right.
sorry, I don't.
That's all right. By the way, I just the other night watched the movie. Let me think what it's called. My Salinger Year. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
watched that movie, which is just interesting because it's from the point of view of an assistant, who gets
Oh,
all
okay.
of the, but in this case, she isn't looking at proposals. She's looking
Uh,
at letters to the author that come into the
oh,
agency,
okay. All right.
of all of these. Oh, please, Mr. Salinger, read my novel. Or,
Sure.
oh, please, I adore you. Can I meet you? Can you advise me? And
Oh my
it's just,
goodness.
yeah, it's the
That's
same sort of
funny.
thing. Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's
she's
awesome.
hired just to read the letters to Salinger. That's her job.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. I
And
think I'll have to
supposedly,
see that.
yeah, it's supposedly it's based on a true story. So
Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
I
Oh, that's
know, I
awesome.
know.
Yeah, some of the bigger some of the bigger general market agencies definitely, I mean, receive hundreds every single day.
Yeah,
There's no getting around that. That's why when we were sending out the everything through the post office, you felt lucky when you got a letter back with a note from an agent, right?
yeah,
Because
absolutely,
because you
absolutely.
knew how much time it involved them to write the note, put it in the envelope, take it to the post
Yes,
office because of the number that they receive.
yeah, yeah,
And while we receive a lot of queries, it's not as time consuming anymore because I'm able to open it up quick. As soon as it says fantasy on it, I know right away that's not for me. And I'm
yeah.
able to, and I feel so bad because some authors get so insulted, and I understand because having sent things out myself, but one gentleman said, but why didn't you read it? And I tried to explain. I did send him another note back and I said, well, if it's in a genre I don't handle, it doesn't matter to me how good it is or how wonderful the idea is. You don't want me as an agent because I'm telling
Right,
you right up front, I don't have the connections
right,
to
right, right,
help
right,
you.
right, right,
So even if I signed you, and so
right.
it's, yeah,
I,
it's
I may have,
difficult.
I may have told you years ago when we wrote that first book, which was about being over 50. My two friends and
Hmm.
I. We got signed by a New York agent. We were over the moon, and it
Sure.
turned out he had signed us only because his sister had turned 60 the night before, and he went to a party of women her age, and he was so impressed with them that he was
Uh,
interested in our book. Here's the problem was that all the rest of his books were like mafia and sports figures, autobiographies or memoirs,
oh, that's
and
funny.
and he had no contacts whatsoever, in the
Yeah.
publishing houses for ours. And
Oh,
so,
that's
as much
funny.
as he wished and we wished, it was such a bad fit. So,
Oh my goodness. Oh,
yeah,
I'm so
isn't that
sorry.
funny? We didn't
Yeah.
even know till we went to his New York office and we looked at the shelf. It was
And all
all
of his
mafia
books.
figures.
Oh my
I
goodness. Oh,
know.
that's hilarious. Yeah,
Um,
those are the kinds of things that authors just don't realize.
yeah,
And so, and I feel bad because I know they can really get their feelings hurt to the point where they're just downright angry about it. But
mm,
um it's if an author does their homework, that's probably the best tip I can give any writer, because all
yes,
the things that I tell writers about not to do,
right,
I did myself.
right,
I mean, I did the same thing,
right.
and so and now I understand that, and I'm able to look at it with, with fresh eyes and say, this isn't the way to do it.
Yep,
So we definitely want authors to do their homework and find out exactly what an agent handles, because that's your first step to getting your foot in the door
yep,
correctly. And
gotcha.
an agent or editor definitely looks at that and goes, this person knows the industry enough to have done that right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Tell a lot of the people who watch these, look at old women who write, are
Mhm.
new writers or wannabe writers. Um, tell everyone the difference between a query letter and a proposal.
Sure. A query letter is just normally a one-page letter that introduces the author to the agent or editor. In the second, that's one paragraph. You tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about why you're the person to write this book. Then in the second paragraph, you're going to tell us a little bit about the book itself. And in the final paragraph, just a normal closing. I hope to hear from you within a specified amount of time. I hope this letter finds you open to this. I'd love to send you the full. And then that's the end of it. The reason I always ask for a proposal is because if I'm interested in it at all, I want to go ahead and start reading some of it. So that's why our agency normally requests the full proposal right away, not just a query letter.
For fiction and nonfiction, both.
Yeah, yeah. And then a proposal, excuse me, a proposal has the query letter. That's followed by a short biography about the person. And that can be details just relating to writing itself, maybe education and writing level. Then we want to see, we also want to see a synopsis. We also want to see like a jacket blurb of that book. We want to see, these aren't necessarily in order. We've got it on our site. Then we want to see a competitive analysis, and what that is, or it's also called comparables. And that means we want to see books within the last 5 years that we would hope that their readers would also like our book. We're not telling the agent, I write like so-and-so. What we're telling the agent or editor is, I would think that the readers of these books would also like my book.
So it would help if those books sold.
Yes, it would, and it would be books within the last 5 years about. Then we want to know who your target audience is. And this is really hard for new authors. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't know who your target audience is, how do you write that book? So target audience is really important. You can have a primary and secondary target, that's fine. But we need to know who you're targeting with this book, because a publisher will want to know that as well, because they need to know who they're going to be marketing that book to. Then we also want marketing strategies, and this is the dreaded platform that everybody hates to hear about. But the fact of the matter is, this is the way I explain it at conferences or in a situation like this. Let's say, and I'm just pulling a number out of the air, but let's say a publisher has 5 slots for debut authors. This is where they want to put all their new authors. But another house closes their fiction line or closes entirely. And let's say out of that house comes 3 best-selling authors who are looking for a new home. They're going to get 3 of those slots, possibly.
Of course.
Let's say there's 2 slots left. Well, they've already been looking at this one author who's been building her platform, so she fills slot number 4. So the last slot that's left, let's say 2 books that this publishing house has fallen in love with. They love the subject. They just love everything about it. They think this is just going to be, both of these books are going to be hot sellers. One of the authors has a huge platform, which means they've built their social media, they do speaking engagements, they teach at conferences, and the other author has none of this going on. Or they have a lot of social media, 100 people here, 100 people there. Who do you think that publisher is going to take? The one with the stronger platform. So, and it's not a fault. It simply means they know that author is going to help them sell more books. And that, of course, is the goal of authors and publishers alike. So it's very hard to get authors to understand that they must constantly be building their platform, but it's become a fact of life. It's not It's not like in the 70s where a really good book, because there weren't that many authors, with Amazon, now we just have a flood of authors.
Yeah.
At that time, there were plenty, but not the numbers we have today. And if a publisher loved a book and they took you on and they gave you a big advance, they also assigned you your editor and your publicist. And now you had a publicist you'd be working with. We still have some of that today, but not in the manner that we had 40 and 50 years ago.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Really
where the
does.
publisher dragged you kicking and screaming into the promotion arena. Today, you're required to do a lot of that on your own, even
Right.
with a bigger house.
Gotcha. Also, for newbies, is there an average time between, oh, I got an agent, and publication, assuming all goes well?
Well, it depends on the book. It depends on the genre, what's hot right now and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on if you have someone with a huge, huge, huge platform. In other words, Shaquille O'Neal's mother is doing a tell-all book about Shaquille O'Neal. Mm-hmm. She's probably going to get an agent very quickly. That agent's going to get a book deal very quickly.
I see.
And the book will probably be released fairly quickly.
Got it.
Especially a tell-all book. For the average debut author, let's say someone sends me a historic novel that I just fall in love with, but romantic suspense is hot right now, and that is pretty much what's going on right now. A few years ago, I couldn't get enough historic, because that was so hot at the moment. And that's kind of, it's still selling, but it's a little bit slower, a little bit deeper dip at this moment, a little bit slower sell. So I will still sign that person possibly, but I will let them know this is not going to sell overnight, with some exceptions. If they have a huge endorsement, I mean, huge. That also helps it get into a house quicker.
Got it.
But the average person with a really good book in a genre that's not too hot right now may sign with me and will sit on that while they continue to write. Or I might start sending it out possibly to a couple places, just send feelers out to see what kind of response I'm getting.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not getting a really enthusiastic response and they tell me, but I love the writing, then that means that it's kind of slow for them right now in that genre. So I can send them something later, or I may have an editor tell me, I'm just so full on historic right now. But if this hasn't sold for you in 12 months, I'll look at it for you again.
Right.
So that it just depends on what's hot at the moment.
Right. I got it. Well, one last question, which seems weird to ask a literary agent.
Sure.
But there are a million, it seems like now, small publishing houses. Mm-hmm. Tiny little. There's a bunch in North Carolina.
Sure.
And I have met a number of the people who own them or work, and they are very lovely.
Sure.
Usually women.
Yeah.
But so the question for authors always is: do I go one route or the other?
Yeah.
What do you say? I mean, I'll give you my opinion, which in my not so humble opinion, is that I want to first try my damnedest to get conventionally published.
Uh-huh.
And if that doesn't work, then I'll go that route. Sure. And I'm beginning to understand that I have about as much work to do after publication either way. Is that accurate? I mean,
yeah. There's not a lot of marketing done by smaller houses. They don't have the resources to market heavily.
Yeah.
So your marketing is very limited. You will need to be the primary marketing individual if you go with a smaller house. Now, and this isn't the case with every single smaller house. We have what are considered, the big houses, the absolute, top 5 biggest houses.
Yep.
We have midline publishers, which still do a good amount of publishing, or I mean promoting and marketing. And then you have the really smaller houses they've propped up within the last couple of years, or they popped up 14 or 15 years ago. They may publish a tremendous amount of books, but you need to research them very carefully first. Find out what authors they're working with. Read some of the books that they're putting out to see what the quality is of the editing and such that's going out. And then go to their authors' sites on Amazon and look at their reviews, see what are they getting enough reviews on there? Are they getting good reviews on there? Before, making the kind of decision to do that, because, and this isn't a blanket statement by any mean, because each one of those smaller houses is different, but many of them, not all for sure, are making their money on quantity of books they put out. So for the author, that might mean $2.12 a quarter comes to them. And the balance is going to the publisher, while the author is the one doing all of the marketing and is taking pretty much all the costs on themselves to promote that book. So, and like I said, that's not always the case. There are some that are working very hard to market for their clients. But for the most part, you don't get much marketing with a smaller house. That's just a fact of life. But you want to research them very carefully. Read any comments their authors might have online. That's just really important.
Oh, that's valuable advice. I thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Let me ask you one last question before we move on to your writing. It says in one of your bios, and as I said, I met you through one of the online conferences. It was the North Carolina Writers Workshop, I think it's called.
Sure.
Which they have all over the country, virtually anywhere, all over the country. Do you recommend these conferences for new writers, and if so, why?
Oh, absolutely. Well, one of the first reasons is for networking. Obviously, you're meeting industry people at the conferences that you're not going to meet anywhere else. And most people, most agents and editors, I won't say all, but most who attend conferences are there because they really enjoy working with authors. I mean, that's also part of that job. When you ask what I do all day, I mean, conferences and teaching are something I really look forward to, because I enjoy that. I really enjoy that. So networking is one of the first things, but also to take the classes. They're so important to get classes on the trends things that are trending today.
Yes.
Writing, we both know, we grew up on Clancy and Mary Higgins Clark and some of the others, and writing was done from that omniscient point of view. That was what was popular, which it's not today. It's just not as popular today. Different things are constantly trending that we have to stay abreast of so that the writing is fresh and relevant to today's readers. And you just don't learn that online, or you just don't learn that by reading your favorite books. You learn that by attending conferences where you find out what's hot and trending today.
Makes a lot of sense.
So, and you also meet other authors. I mean, very often you meet new critique partners there, people who are going to help, iron sharpens iron. They're going to help you to become stronger writers.
Well, I'll tell you, the conference I attended was virtual, and I saw both the upsides and downsides of it being virtual. The upside is, of course, I could do it from my home.
Absolutely.
I didn't have all the expense of going somewhere, paying for a hotel, all of that stuff. The downside is the personal interactions, like with other writers, or over a drink or whatever with some agents, or that kind of networking can't happen this way, and that's the downside. So I'm really hoping for a good mix that we can get back to live conferences, which seems to be happening. Like I said,
Yes,
you're doing one in Asheville next week. So,
sure. Yeah, this
yeah.
last year, excuse me, this last year it was pretty much opened up pretty much back to normal. Most of the conferences that I do were back in person. A couple were still on just online, but
Hmm.
and some, well, I'll tell you one good thing that's come out of this crazy pandemic is that some conferences who only ever offered in person
Yeah.
have now decided to offer both.
Both.
And
Yes.
you're right, you don't get as much online because I try to make myself available 24/7 when I'm at conferences. I love nothing more than to sit down with writers and just sit down and talk with them. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
And you obviously can't do that virtually,
Right. Right.
but I do think there are so many folks who simply can't handle the cost of an in-person conference and now have this opportunity
Yeah.
to be part of a conference online. And
Yes.
even though you don't walk away with 100%, even if you walk away with 50%,
Right.
your writing is going to be better. And I would also, as much with conferences, I would suggest that people join
Classes.
writing
Oh.
or
Oh.
writing organizations.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
because most of them offer classes with the
Right.
membership. I think RWA does or used to. I know American Christian Fiction Writers offers classes.
Hmm.
There's another Christian organization, faithwriters.com, and they also offer classes. They also have, or did have, I'm not sure anymore, they
Hmm.
did have a free membership. With that, you could not take current classes, but you were able to take all of their archived
Oh,
classes.
sure.
So
Yeah.
you were still getting classes from like a year
Right.
or two ago, which are still excellent classes.
Right. Well, I know that the Flatiron Writers Group, or that I've been taking some classes from, which is located in Nashville, North
Uh-huh.
Carolina. They were, in person,
Sure.
small. Well, the pandemic has opened up the world to them for their classes.
Sure. Oh,
And they
absolutely.
were
Yeah.
amazed. They turned on a dime, right, and went full out online to
That's
everybody's
awesome.
benefit. Yeah.
That's
So, okay,
awesome. Yeah.
okay. Let's talk about your writing. Tell us. Tell us. I have to tell you, I read one of your books just a couple weeks ago, and it was so creepy.
Oh,
It was
good.
so creepy. It was. I got to write down. It was blow out the candles and say goodbye.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So talk about what you write.
Well, I've written more historic than I have
Have you?
suspense, but suspense and romantic suspense are where my heart's at.
Ah,
Yeah, right now, I mean, I haven't put a book out in a couple years now because the agenting has just been time consuming with more clients. So, but I
right.
have like 10 I'm writing right now.
Oh,
I work on a bunch at a time. That way I can go back in bits and pieces as things happen and pick back up and do some more writing. I have one, three or four more done, but they need a lot of work
oh
still.
my
So
gosh.
yeah, and those are in the actually humorous mystery section, sort of, more like the
Oh,
chicklet section, or yeah, chicklet. I guess it's still called that.
wow.
Uh,
So you must be the most organized writer in the world if you can be working on three or four at a time.
yeah,
Or
I'm really disorganized. When it comes to my clients, I'm extremely organized. That's an area that I just make sure but the writing is disorganized, and that's why I just have so many ideas going on in my head
oh,
at once, and I sit down and I write it, and I'll get halfway done or I'll get the whole thing done, and before I can edit, I'm bored easily, and so I move on to the next one.
wow.
If I were more organized, they wouldn't still all just simply be on my computer. They would be out there. I have one I started 20 some years ago
Ah,
that is it's a military kind of a psychological thriller. And it started out, uh, and it was about the first African American president of the United States. And there was a bombing of the White House and bombing of the oh goodness, I'm drawing a blank. of the Pentagon,
Mhm.
and the president, the vice president, and the Speaker of the House were all killed. And so we ended up with the fourth in line being the Secretary of State, and he was African American. And well, right after I finished it, we had the 9/11 bombing of the
Yes,
Pentagon in New York. And everyone that I sent it to said, you need to shelf this right now. It's too raw for us.
of course.
So I put it away. Well, then, 3 years ago, the show came out on TV about everyone getting killed except for, I think, one of the
Oh,
senators or congressmen or something. I
right.
went, wait, what?
Your
So it's
idea has
still,
been taken over by time and events and
it
other presidents,
has, yeah. But
right?
I'm rewriting it. I still love the story itself. It's one of my favorite things I've ever written. So I think that'll get some rewrites done to it. The premise will basically stay the same, only the person, it'll be someone different because we've now had the first African American president.
Right.
So that would be a moot point.
Well, everybody always talks about having a writing practice. I get the impression from what you're saying that your personal writing, your professional personal writing, is
Uh-huh.
squeezed in
It
somewhere.
is.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, it takes a backseat to my clients and everything else. I balance it better. If I have a deadline, I'm better
Mm.
at balancing. I won't just sit with notes back and forth to my clients and just, the fun part of being an agent will take a back seat while I'm meeting a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm not on a deadline, I mean it it's not my priority. It just isn't. The
I got
clients
it.
are.
Got it. Well, let me ask this. As an agent, now you started writing before you became an agent, then, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I was probably when I was
considerably
in
before.
early 40s, 40,
Okay.
41, somewhere in there.
Okay.
That's when I
But,
actually wrote Blow Out the Candles for the first
oh, is
time.
that right? Oh, wow. Well, as an agent, do you have to go through the same process of
Yeah,
getting an agent or
yeah,
getting a publisher? Do you
yeah.
rep
Same
your own
thing.
books?
Yeah, I have to send everything I want to get sent out to Jim, who's my boss as well as my agent.
Yes.
I have to send it out to him. I usually get everything ready for him. It's a little bit nicer in that sense because I know exactly what he wants to see and how to lay it out,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
can do that before sending it to him. But that's the only difference. He still has to like a book, and he
Yeah.
still has to send it to the editors for it to get picked up. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
no shortcuts.
Interesting.
I wish there were.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, one other question that I should have asked before that occurred to me.
Sure.
Have you ever used, I don't know if you do it for novels. Yeah, I think you do. Sends it out to, like, I think they're called beta readers
Sure.
to,
Um,
you do? And do
yeah.
you recommend it?
Oh my goodness, yes. And you can call them beta readers or critique partners.
Uh-huh.
It just depends. I would 12 or 13 years ago, I met my critique partners. Now we're not active as much anymore, but we're still there for each other if we need help with something. But we started a group through ACFW that was, I believe there were 7 of us at the time. I believe it was 7 of us. And we were at all different levels of writing. Some people were horrible at grammar. Some couldn't punctuate worth a darn. Others could look at content and just know what was missing. So we were all coming from different directions. At this
Mm-hmm.
point, with the exception of one young lady who dropped out, took a sabbatical to raise her family, we have a managing editor at a publishing house is one of the critique partners. She's also an author for Love Inspired. Another one of the clients, another one of the critique partners has 3 books out. Another one
Wow.
has 3 books out. I'm one of them. gosh, there's two more
Wow.
people and I'm drawing a blank. Everyone is either published or an agent or an
Wow.
editor or working somewhere in the industry.
That's
Because iron
impressive.
sharpens iron, you work hard with each other to help make those corrections.
Yes.
And it's really important because we don't view our babies with objective
Yes.
eyes. We only
Yes.
see them with subjective eyes. And no matter how many times we make corrections on our computers, we still aren't correcting things that need editing and correction. Someone else has to look at it and go, and it might be something as simple as he had blue eyes at the beginning and brown eyes at the end.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't see that because our mind automatically corrects it for us.
Yep.
A timeline problem, our mind corrects it for us. And we don't even realize we've still got that problem on there. So critique partners are gold. I recommend that
Wow.
everybody works with critique partners because, oh, they just catch things that we can't possibly do.
Yes.
And our babies
Yes.
are beautiful to us, even when they're ugly.
Right.
Somebody else has to say,
It's
that baby
true.
is ugly.
Right. Right. Wow. Linda, this has been so lovely, so informative and interesting.
Oh, I'm
Um,
so
I
glad it helped.
I can't thank you enough for agreeing to do this. As I said, it took all my nerve to ask a real agent if she
Oh,
would be
gosh.
interviewed for Old Women Who Write.
Oh,
And
trust me, we need our coffee every morning like everybody else. No difference.
I hear you. So bless you. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Appreciate it. To all of you, I hope you've enjoyed listening and watching Linda. It's as interesting to watch you as you speak because you have so
Oh.
much energy, good energy. And so I'm so glad
Good.
this wasn't by phone, that it's, a
Good.
real thing. So thank you. And to everyone else, bye bye.
You're welcome.